on service delivery. We have had very, very big challenges hit by corruption. It takes a lot of money from our accounts as the country. You have been seeing the reports from the IGG and the amount of money, really in trillions actually, not just a few money. So it is huge money that we lose on corruption, and this goes back to service delivery, because all this money should have been allocated to do something. But when someone swindles it, maybe they are swindling off a road, maybe they are eating off someone. By the way, I remember Reverend Jasper some time back told us that corruption, every time someone takes money, just know they are the cause of that pothole you're seeing somewhere. So it is important that every time someone takes the money, they are creating a hole in town. So they are eating the sand and the tarmac and all that. So it is very important for us to know what impact corruption causes in the country. But of course, it's not me who's going to be discussing this. I have a very prominent person to discuss this, Mr. Kizito David from Transparency International. You're most welcome, David.
Thank you, and good morning, dear viewers out there.
Yes.
I think it's quite a lovely morning.
Yeah, it is.
And we come at a time when we are still within the Holy Weeks.
Yeah.
I remember last time we were recovering from Easter last week, and now our Muslim brothers are celebrating Eid.
Yes, sure.
So we believe we can try to maintain that holiness and continue sanitizing, ourselves for the betterment of this country. So as introduced, I'm David Kizito, and I work with Transparency International Uganda as a programs officer.
Okay.
So briefly about Transparency International Uganda, we are an NGO, a non-government organization, and we derive our name from Transparency International, which is a global coalition against corruption. So Transparency International is in over 100 countries, and so every country that adopts the name Transparency International then becomes a national chapter.
Okay.
So our secretariat is in Berlin, Germany. So we've been around for quite some time. We are making 31 years
Here
this
in Uganda?
year. Yeah.
Wow.
Both here in Uganda and globally. So Uganda is as old as the secretariat. We were founded around the same time in 1993. Okay. And the beauty of it is that among the persons that founded Transparency International was our former Inspector General of Government, that is Honorable Augustine Rozindana. So he was one of those people that founded Transparency International in Berlin, but also found it very useful to have a chapter in Uganda. So that's Transparency International Uganda. Okay. So we work on different programs and we work in different areas. And in Uganda, I might say we currently now cover almost every district because corruption cuts across.
Oh, yes.
However, we have 52 districts where we have direct interventions. So, and those districts are spread across all the regions. So how we do our work, currently we mainly now focus on preventive approaches to corruption, because the nature of corruption currently and how we prosecute corruption cases. Some of these cases are frustrating. So if you wait for the money to be stolen, you may never recover it. So the most approach is now to prevent that money being stolen. So we have programs in land where we see issues of land grabbing, land injustice, and land corruption. So that program is called Land and Corruption, though it's an African project, and it's been around for the last about 10 years in Uganda, trying to sensitize communities on their land rights. We have programs in natural resource governance. For those that have been following discussions in mineral exploitation, discussions in the oil region, you realize there are issues that relate to corruption, issues that relate to transparency. And one of our biggest cause there was that currently we now have the Extractive Transparency Industries Initiative, which is a global tool to ensure that we see more transparency and more openness when it comes to mineral exploitation and all the processes relating to minerals. Then we have programs in social service delivery. So that's where I think most of Omuntu wa Wansi is concerned. So these programs entail issues of education, issues of health, issues of production, agriculture, issues of social protection. So these are all lumped up under social service delivery. But now, more importantly, we are also going into issues of domestic resource mobilization. So we have now discussions towards fair taxation. We have discussions towards resource allocation, budget utilization. We have issues towards, we have now laws, for example, beneficial ownership, and how we can enhance company transparency, or what people call corporate transparency, to ensure that, you know, these companies give Ugandans the fair share of their taxes, and then we eliminate issues of money laundering, issues of tax evasion, issues of illicit financial flows. So our strategic approach is clustered into about 4 thematic areas. And then the last one that I forgot is politics. And you know, politics is more, I think, the backbone of everything. When you discuss issues of transparency, when you discuss issues of utilization of resources, you can't leave behind politics, because most of the decisions are actually determined by the politics in the country.
All right.
So briefly, I think that's what I can say about transparency. But to emphasize, we are a non-government organization. We fundraise, and our programs are based on donor money, because we can't receive money from the government of Uganda. That would compromise our integrity, but also I think people believing in what we do, but also the fact that government, we don't have a vote from government to fund us. So our address, we are located in Tinda, but also have a regional office in Lira.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That was a good way to elaborate more about Transparency International. Of course, the emphasis, I like the emphasis, non-government organization. But well, let's delve into the discussion and see what impact corruption causes on service delivery. Yes. So majorly, can we first zero it down maybe to the education sector? I don't know if we should start with the health sector or education sector.
But mainly to understand corruption, because I think a normal Ugandan would want to know how bad it is.
It is, okay.
And from, I think, the examples we've been seeing, the Twitter exhibitions and the rest, people would want to know how bad is it currently. So Transparency International has an annual report. And this report, we call it the Corruption Perceptions Index. So that report ranks countries globally on their perceived levels of corruption. So the report tells you which country is more corrupt and what is your perceived score, or what would be the marks if it was in education. So every country every year is supposed to get a score and a rank. So this year Uganda scored 26 out of 100. So that 26. Means we did poorly, yeah. So when it came to the rank, our position, we are 142nd out of, we were 141st out of 180 countries. Meaning then, we are towards the end tail among the most corrupt countries.
Wow.
And it's quite unfortunate that the East African region performed poorly.
All of them
across the globe, yes. Because the problem is that we are ranked with countries like Somalia, and Somalia is on the bottom, and also South Sudan. South Sudan is also towards the bottom. So our region then became the worst.
Okay. And so, then zeroing it to Africa, what is? So do you have the stats?
Africa, I don't have all the stats now, but at least we have countries such as Mauritius, countries such as Botswana. They have been doing better, because those are all above the global average of 43. Okay. Then we also have in our region Rwanda, that's scored 53. It's also above. Then we have countries like Tanzania that have been making progress. So Tanzania scored 38. Then now we have Angola. Angola has also been showing improvement, but we see countries.
How about us? Did we improve or we maintained?
So coming back to Uganda, for the last 2 years we maintained 26, but the bad news is that we came from 27 to 26. But also we've actually been declining, because in 2019 we were at 28. So instead of improving, we just performed worse. But the National Development Plan 3, the one we are into, had set a target of a score of 35. So we are just 9 points behind the score. So we believe there is still a long way to go. But besides that, when you look at, there is a report by the Inspectorate of Government, the National Integrity Survey. And this survey believes that more than 76% of Ugandans believe that corruption is actually increasing. So it's just a few Ugandans that believe, when they look at the way things are done, it's just a few of them that believe that we are doing any better. So 76 believe corruption is increasing in the country.
And what is on ground?
Of course, now those are the Ugandans now that really tell you that corruption is increasing. And I think this is based on the fact that getting some of these public services and getting access to justice, some of them have encountered some bit of aspects of bribery and corruption. And of course, we don't ask any ordinary Ugandan. You'll ask people that have interfaced with some of these institutions to give you their experience. So then Transparency International Uganda, we have a report of the Uganda Bribery Index. And that report, almost similar to the National Integrity Survey, it also showed that more than 80% of Ugandans believed that corruption is increasing. And our target was that we were asking Ugandans who had interfaced with more than 3 government institutions to tell us their experiences. And most of them testified that they had encountered bribery, and that's why they tell you that corruption is increasing. So when it comes to bribery specifically, what was shared was that police then was the most prone to bribery. But then who was taking the most share of the bribe was the judiciary, the courts and that. Because then getting access to justice, you give in more money. But when it comes to police, the average amount was about 50,000. So that's how bad corruption is currently. Now, coming back to the Inspector General of Government, there is a report of the cost of corruption in Uganda. That report was sponsored by GIZ. And when you look at the figures, it's estimated that between 9 trillion to 20 trillion is what we lose annually to corruption.
Yes.
And looking at what we anticipate to collect from URA, we anticipate to collect about 30 trillion, in domestic revenues.
Yes.
So if you're losing 20 trillion in corruption and you're collecting 30, that means about 150% of your collections
is going to
be lost. Yeah. But there are also other studies. For example, the Global Financial Integrity. It tells us that we lose about 2 trillion every year in illicit financial flows. So illicit financial flows involves corruption. It involves the money you lose in mineral smuggling, and when someone comes, extracts your golds and takes it out without paying tax, all these things, and they all amount to corruption. That's how much we lose. So the point is that if we can close out all these loopholes, strengthen our systems in managing our public resources, we believe that we can do much better.
Okay.
Now, coming back to our key sectors, the education, the health, we have figures, but about absenteeism alone, we lose about 250 billion in absenteeism. That's education. So for Ugandan, if you want to understand what constitutes corruption, You know, when you pay a teacher or a health worker and is supposed to be on duty at 8 a.m. and that person is not on duty, that's corruption.
That's also
because you pay them for a service, but then they don't render that service within the given time. And going by the definition of corruption, corruption can be the misuse of entrusted power for public gains, or it could be the misuse of public resources for public gains. So if it's a public office like a health facility or a school, and you're paying these people to be there and they are not there, so we lose about 250 billion every year.
Wow.
So if it's to construct a school, I think most of our average schools would they cost about 1 billion. So that means you have about 250 schools every year that would be constructed. In this money we lose alone in corruption. So I think in summary that could be the magnitude of corruption in Uganda.
Okay. Now, how about these campaigns we always see? Because we are seeing so many campaigns fight against corruption. We are seeing so many entities who are in this. What is not happening? I thought we are somewhere going forward.
Supposed to make improvement. Ideally, that's how it is supposed to be. We should be making improvement in the fight against corruption. And I would appreciate that there is many of us, both in the civil society and in government. However, I think we have a few mismatches. For example, going to our specific sectors of discussion today, the health and education, we have committees that are supposed to, to monitor some of these institutions, some of the teachers and how work is done. We have the role of inspectors. We have the school management committees. However, you realize that as much as, the IGGs in Kampala, trying to, follow up money's loss here and there, there are these people that are supposed to play their mandate. But how functional are these systems, even before we look at, the agencies that are supposed to enforce accountability? How functional are the school management committees? From our works previously, we've noted that sometimes the chairpersons of the school management committees connive with the head teachers to embezzle, for example, UPE capitation grants. So would we then blame the IG for, for that connivance between, the SMC and, the head teachers? We have the PTAs, and they are supposed to monitor how things move, how teachers perform, and even the parents out there, you're supposed to monitor the performance of your child and, interrogate, why is it that my child is not performing? So would you wait for the Inspector General of Government to tell you as a parent that you have to go and monitor to see whether the teacher actually teaches, your child in school? I think there are these basics that we are trying to ignore, but they definitely catch up with us. So as we do our role on, fighting corruption at this higher level, I think citizens have that role. And I think at a certain level, they haven't played their sole mandate. In 2007, I remember I went to a public health facility, and I reported at 8 a.m., but up to 2 p.m., no single health worker had attended to me, and there were quite many of us. So because at least maybe I had a chance to go for the alternative, I went to a clinic and I got a service. But the beauty of it was that I had people who decided to use that case to constitute what they called a people's parliament at that health facility. So the result of this people's parliament was that the district team was called, and these issues of absenteeism and what, I can say during that period, they were kind of ironed out. But over time, people encounter such things and they turn a deaf ear.
Sure.
And at some point you'll go to a health facility, you want your wife to do an emergency delivery, but because you've contributed to the complacence, you've contributed to the system of how can I call it? You've contributed to that culture of I don't care attitude. It will always catch up with you.
And still talking about the health sector, I also know of a health center in some place there in the villages. For it, the doctors do come on specific days. So I don't know if it is actually their timetable that facilitates that, or patients are supposed to also be sick on specific day.
So there is a weakness there, and I think that then we shall target to the resources available. When it comes to certain specialized services, we have a weakness that the providers, the medical providers and practitioners of these services, in most times are not readily available. So now that goes to the issue of resources. In most of our health facilities, we have challenges of them being under-resourced. And the UGIFT program, there is a program of UGIFT where they have been trying to even upgrade health center 2s to health center 3s. And the reason was that they wanted to expand on the services that are being provided at those lower units of service delivery. However, still you realize that even the existing health facilities are not adequately staffed as they should be. A health center 3 is supposed to have about 17 medical workers. So medical workers have lumped them all together. This includes support staff, it includes what we call the nurses, it includes what we call the midwives and the rest. So they are supposed to be about 17. But you'll go to a facility and you have about active staff of maybe 10 to 13. The rest are always not around. But these staffing lists are provided basing on, for example, the number of patients that are supposed to be serviced within a specific area. So any person missing means there is a huge gap that you'll put in place.
And unfortunately, some of them you find they're at their own pharmacies.
They have their own hassles, their own hassles, and now those are the realities. Now, when we come to the nitty-gritties of now what corruption happens in some of these facilities, you realize there are those things of course, you said the absenteeism where people come on certain days, but also you have issues of drug theft, and this has mainly contributed to frequent drug stockouts. You have issues of misallocation, misutilization of some of these monies. For example, money is meant to do PHC. So it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot, and for us, we think ironing out these things, it has to be a two-way approach. Transparency International, the Inspector General of Government, State House Anti-Corruption Unit, we have our role to play, but also the communities also have a role to play. For example, I can't know that a certain health worker doesn't report on duty every day. Unless the beneficiaries tell us that as much as you say that so and so is supposed to be here, they are always attending to their private clinic. And when it comes to these government drugs, they are labeled government of Uganda, not for sale. But someone will comfortably go buy something labeled, and they'll never even report that this given clinic is selling government items. So how will I know? And we can't have intelligence everywhere, because the budget of the Inspector General of Government, the IGG, not even the Inspector General of Government, but the Inspectorate of Government, the institution, their annual budget could be around 70 billion. But 70 billion includes the staff, it includes facilitating prosecution of cases, it includes investigation, it includes their operation, it includes their rent. But Uganda has over how many districts? We are about 130 plus districts.
They increase every day.
Now, if you want the IGG to cover the entire country on that small budget, it's impossible. They can't do intelligence everywhere. So unless the citizens then help to solve those things, maybe provide intelligence, but also solve things that you can solve at your local unit, I think we may not make much progress.
Wow, that's interesting. In case you're just joining us, we're discussing the implications of corruption on service delivery. And of course, partially, Mr. David explained to us what corruption means and what it actually means in reality. Because you may think of corruption, you only hear of a government official so and so has stolen money. No, that is not the only corruption. Corruption is wide. Well, we're going in for a very short break and return with more discussions.
Issues at hand, powered by
Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. Comfort and luxury at its best.
Family TV, enriching lives. Family TV, enriching lives. Issues at hand, powered by
Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. Comfort and luxury at its best.
Comfort and luxury at its best at Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. Gearing us up here in Issues at Hand. Please contact those numbers on the screens for booking and reservation. We are still continuing with the discussion, and we are looking at the impact of corruption on service delivery. Yes, I'm being joined here by Mr. David Kizito from the Transparency International, and he has been telling us what corruption is and also what they do at Transparency International. So, and now I want to, before we dive into the implications, I want to also touch a little bit about in the education sector. Yeah. We have had so many school. There is a time a report came in a newspaper, and the school is in Nakaseke. The school is very, very badly off, and kids are studying under, some of them are studying under a tree, others are studying in a classroom that is made of mud, and it also has holes already. And but the whole situation is annoying. So what happens? These are government-aided schools.
Yeah, they are.
Yes. So why can't government facilitate such? Is it a cause of corruption? Do people swindle off that money, or I don't know?
No, I think government has a weakness, and like we were discussing, we currently come at a time that the more we've seen the private sector growing, the more we've seen our public sector weakening. We've seen quite a number of schools in the process of our monitoring of some of these service deliveries, where sometimes you have something that would look like a hole, a bigger hole, and then there is either a small partition or just the benches or the desks face opposite directions. So maybe P3 faces east and P4 faces west. So if you just turn your back, you're able to catch up with what P4 is learning, and a P3 learner will just turn their back and catch up with what the other guys are catching up with. And of course, we've seen so many structures of mud and water. We've seen structures where there are leakages in roofs. I think there was a clip that was circulating back in the days where, we would see rain actually, falling within a school, and kids had to step on desks to get shelter. And these schools are all over. Within near the urban centers, we may not see how bad it is.
Yes, sure.
But when you go in the rural countryside, these challenges are there. I remember there is a time that was back in 2014. There was a school in Ruengo, deep in the villages. I think that school is called Kanyogoga. This school had about 2 classroom structures. And one of the structures was a 1990s donation by I think it was USAID, if I remember properly. And even the label of USAID had kind of faded. And then on the side there was something like a muzigo, like these normal shop things. That was housing the headmaster's office, the staff room and everything. So, but I think then what we did was that we had community monitors that then worked with the district leadership and lobbied for construction of facilities. And I think for them that worked then, because the structures were then beautified and things like that. That school was in Kanyogoga. But we've seen schools there are schools in Rakai and everywhere, where you just see a structure, a school having, what can I call it? Like you have like a cattle shed, something like that. And I think currently Ugandans have animals that even sleep much better than some of these school structures. And of course now this comes to how much is government willing to invest in its public sector. We have programs under YouGift where most of our infrastructure programs are funded by development partners. You see, and you remember last year we had a scenario where one of our key development partners wanted to pull out because of, I think, certain legislations they feel are uncomfortable. And I think the assurance was that they wanted us to assure them that they won't infringe on, on rights. But we come at a point where we hugely rely on development partners, funding than our own government, funding to support our private sector. So you look at our budget, we have about 4 trillion in education sector. Then I think health sector is also still about 4.17 trillion, the budget we are finalizing this year. However, you should also know that most of this budget doesn't go to, development expenditure. It goes to mainly recurrent expenditure. So you have wage, salaries, you have issues of, those recurrent things, inspection here and there, things that, that every year you'll have to incur. So you're not constructing new schools, you're not constructing new things, you're not putting in place infrastructure, but the wage bill and things like that is what you're mainly spending on.
Yes.
So that means our investment expenditure in most of these facilities won't be sustained. And when it comes to now our debt and budget, you should realize that the last supplementary, I think, expenditure we had from Parliament, we wanted to get money to, actually at some point we wanted to borrow money to pay for salaries. You imagine how unsustainable that is.
Yes.
That in your planning, the first thing you should plan for is the salaries, and you must be assured that in the financial year 2023-24, the salaries are assured. But if you have to borrow to cover the
salary,
the wage gap, that shows you that we are still lagging behind. So unless we have those deliberate efforts from government to see how we, how we improve on our investment expenditure in infrastructure, in supporting the public sector, I think we shall continue struggling. But also more importantly, I think as Ugandans, we need to strike a balance between the private sector and the public sector. Otherwise, I think we are noting that, like I said, we are noting that we are now giving more of our attention to the private sector, and we are not minding anymore on our schools, our traditional health centers and the rest.
Now, for someone out there who swindles off money, we want to understand the implications they cause.
The implication.
Yes. What happens after someone has taken away money in form of corruption?
Of course, there is that complacence by Ugandans where they support the thieves as much as they are investing back home. And I think that's a wrong perception. There's a time, I think one of the heads of the parliamentary institutions was implicated in those corruption things. I think it was the relief items for Karamoja. And when the name came out, their voters staged, they staged the procession, and they're like, why are you chanting our person, yet this person is building schools here, is supporting us? But you forget one fundamental thing, that where this money is supposed to go, that gap still exists.
Yes, sure.
For example, if you're supposed to build a road in Nakaseke, you steal that man of the road and construct a school in Katosi. As much as the guys in Katosi will enjoy the education, these guys in Nakaseke will die of accidents.
Yes.
So if we try to now understand that the selfishness of gaining at the cost of someone else losing doesn't benefit us in the end, and it's not permanent that I'll always be a permanent resident in Nakaseke, in Katosi. Someone will steal and bring that money back home, but then at some point you'll be forced to shift and go to where that service was supposed to be. So we've seen scenarios where money for a health facility is stolen. But because you think you don't belong to that health facility, at some point you're posted to work there, and you have to benefit from the same health facility. So you want to do a deliver, and you know a midwife is not there, and in the end you'll either face those consequences of maybe your person has died, or maybe you have to incur costs of an ambulance to do a referral to a more expensive facility. So as Ugandans, we need to understand that if this money is for goats in Karamoja or iron sheets in Karamoja, but those goats are not put there, these Karamojongs are going to come on the streets of Kampala and start becoming a problem. So indirectly we shall always contribute to this problem. So it always catches up with us. But also more importantly, corruption has, I think, dire consequences. We've seen roads, of timelines of about 10 years. A road of a lifetime of 10 years. Yet it's supposed, in its design, it was supposed to be for about 50 years. Then you suffer with potholes. We have so many people now. Is it the cost of repair and the rest? Now coming back to our health facilities, I think Uganda have come at a time when now education is highly, it's becoming highly unaffordable. And I think most of the reasons why most people in our age brackets are now fearing to produce, one, you'll think at the cost of education. That wasn't the case back then. Because then education was a bit affordable. What you needed to do was buy a uniform, get the books, and maybe lunch for your learner. But now we are at a time when education is highly expensive.
Yes.
And what's the result of that cost is that in most of these rural communities where people are highly poor, we have Ugandans that can't afford to get, $1 a day. $1, that's about 3,800 shillings per day. They can't afford to get that every day. And you expect them to pay school fees of about, 100,000 every term. So, because people can't afford now the current cost of these public services, what are we seeing? Dropouts. We are seeing, the rise in gangs, these gang groups and the rest. And like I said, we contribute to the problem.
Yes.
But this school dropout, you see, that person is going to reach a point when they have needs. They have to sustain a family, because there are certain needs you'll always have. You'll always have to eat. You'll always have to dress up. You'll always have to get medical care. So, in that event, what happens? I think we've seen Vijambias, and the rest. And now when it comes to the political periods, who are these guys we always mobilize? Let's go to the streets, and it's always the softest landing is this category of people that have nothing to lose. So the more you have that bracket of people, even the rate of development of your country is questionable. We have at the URA, when you look at our tax, the taxpayers, the numbers, URA tells you they have a list of about 3 million taxpayers. But in Uganda, we believe we would have about 18 million Ugandans who would be eligible to pay taxes. What is the problem? Most of your citizens are in that bracket. That may be the consequences, the effects of corruption have caught up with them, that they even can't contribute to your tax bracket. So because you have so many dependents, but you have so few contributors, so you have this vicious cycle of problems. Revenue is very low, then budget collections and budget allocations are still low, so we can't meet our expenditures, and then we come and now start pestering government. But it's a cycle. It's a cycle. So when we ignore these basics, they'll always catch up.
What interventions are being made now? Because we have seen campaigns to fight corruption. We have seen this. What should be done? Is it going back to the real person down there?
So the campaigns, in brief, like I said, it's a two-way. Communities, let's play our role. If you say school, there are allocations, but you believe your teachers are absent. Like I told you, 250 billion, the cost of absenteeism. Then we have ghost workers. I think the Auditor General's report was at about 18 billion that we spent on ghost workers.
Yes.
So if we believe these people are there, let us report them. You see, let us be part of the solution. We have these exhibitions. For us to believe they should continue so that they try to bring out the filth, in some of these public expenditures, so that now at our side we can strengthen, the monitoring, we can strengthen, the investigations and all these things. So at government, I think there are moves, for example, when it comes to companies investing in the private sector, we have now laws on beneficial ownership transparency. Now for us, why we are pushing for this law is one, to lift the veil. If we believe our public health center is not doing well, but then the nearby clinic or the nearby private health center is doing so well, who is the person, who is the ultimate owner of this person, so that we shall understand that if someone is deliberately trying to cripple our public system, if someone is deliberately trying to cripple our public education, institutions, who are these people, then we shall be able to tell and maybe have those deliberate interventions. Of course, there is also now some bit of coordination in the anti-corruption agencies. We have now things like the Anti-Corruption Inter-Agents Forum, where these institutions meet, and then at some point they call on the civil society to come and contribute. The Anti-Corruption Court Division, the High Court Division of the Anti-Corruption, put in place what they call the Anti-Corruption Court Users Committee. This is to bring in, some of these fears. What happens when it comes to prosecution of cases? How do we better prosecute cases and things like that, which we believe will give us a better go. But also, there are now discussions on a lifestyle audit, of course. And of course, we believe that campaign can't work if citizens don't give the IGG information. If you know your minister is stealing the money and is building houses or hotels, tell the IGG that this person is building this and this and that. Please report this person, because we've seen so many people stealing money, but investing it in their own. So if you don't report them, of course we won't have any success. But besides that, there are also laws on asset recovery, so that then we can manage properly these assets we recover from people like Kazinda, who stole from the public, and the rest. So we believe if we can move as a team, I think we shall see better results.
Do you believe there is enough follow-up by these actors?
Follow-up could be two-way. Sometimes I think there is, but what is lacking now, or what the citizens want to see, is more success rates when it comes to prosecuting corruption cases. That if I report a case and it's investigated and it is in court, I would want to see these quick results. However, I think what the IG is mainly promoting now is that instead of going for the tedious court procedures, where in the end maybe people will appeal and appeal and appeal, if they believe you stole this money, for them they'll come and they are like, we have assessed and it's 1 billion. Can you give us the 1 billion? Yes. So they do that plea bargain. So under plea bargain, you're like, it's okay, I can pay this, and you settle matters amicably. However, the problem with that is that it doesn't set strong examples to the other corrupt. So if someone knows that I'll steal, and if I'm caught, I'll take back the loot, so that doesn't, it's non-punitive enough to discourage corruption. So one of the things that I think in the laws we've been recommending is to make corruption more risky with those strongest punitive measures, so that even any public servants who would wish to think about it would maybe think twice. But also, I think the issue of selective prosecution. We've seen scenarios where, people that the society terms as small fish, they are quick to appear in courts. But, the high-profile persons don't, they don't prominently come out. And even in cases where the high-profile persons come out, we don't see more of these prosecutions coming up.
Okay.
So citizens would wish to see that. And for us, I think this year the most positive move we've seen is that the 2 ministers that were implicated or that were very key in the Karamoja scandal were dropped in cabinet. So I think that then gives the IGG, the DPP, and the anti-corruption court a chance now to prosecute them without issues of orders from above. Yeah, so I think that's an advantage.
That's nice. Now, I think our time is very spent well, but I wish we had more time to discuss this, because really these are pressing issues that affect all of us. But I would love you give us at least some last remarks in regards to this.
No, for me, I think our last remarks is that we put in place reporting channels for citizens out there to report corruption. At Transparency International Uganda, we have a toll-free line where we still encourage citizens to report corruption, but at least would wish that you give us cases that have some bit of starting evidence, not allegations. So the line is 0800 333 044. 0800 333 044. So it's toll free. Anytime you call, they won't charge you, but it's working days and working hours.
Okay.
And besides that, for us, we still believe we have the Whistleblowers Act, which encourages every Ugandan to report corruption. And the president assured you that you can report to your LCs, to the RDCs, and these reports will always come to us. So let's use all these reporting channels. But most importantly, let's not be complacent with corruption. If you see anything not going well, please report it. And that's how you'll contribute to, improving services in your community and in this country.
Yes, wow. That is interesting. Thank you so much, Mr. David Kizito from Transparency International. Yes, corruption is a collective fight. It is not only the government who's going to do this alone. It is actually you down there and me here to end this, because the government is not going to reach everywhere. Actually, though somehow, somewhere, they used to tell me that government is people for the people, and sort of. So you are also government. You can help end corruption. Corruption is not all about you hear this so-and-so has taken money. No, corruption is everywhere. Corruption is when a teacher does not attend school. That is corruption. You're supposed to report anything that you notice that we really can at least improve somehow, some way. It is really bad to see ourselves going down, meaning we are just corruption is on a rise in the country, and it is a collective effort, just like I said. I appreciate so much. Thank you so much for joining us here today, David, and also our viewer there outside. We appreciate that you also joined us. It is a lovely day. It is Eid. Please do celebrate with your Muslim friends. Do wish them well. You can actually also include the aspect of food, because I know Christians like eating food for Muslims. We are brothers. Anyways, happy Eid to you all, and I want to wish you a lovely day. My name is Luke Majumba Lenaito. We are powered by Protea Hotel by Marriott in Entebbe.
The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of this television or its management, but as of individuals as we hear them.